ready to jump back into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium.
Always up for a good dose of bolter fire and chainsword carnage.
Today, we're diving deep into Blood of Iax.
A classic. MacNiven really captured the brutal reality of the 41st millennium in that one.
No kidding, those orcs weren't messing around.
They rarely do. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's set the scene.
Right, so we've got the Ultramarines chapter, specifically the Fulminata Company.
The best of the best, thrown into a meat grinder.
They get deployed to the planet Ikara, which is facing a full-scale orc YGH.
Basically, imagine a tidal wave of green-skinned fury, fueled by violence and a burning desire to crump anything in their path.
Not a great place to be if you're part of the Imperium. The Imperial Guard are already there, trying to hold back the tide, but they're getting overwhelmed.
The Guard fights with grit and determination, no doubt, but they're outmatched against that kind of orc onslaught. That's where the Ultramarines come in a precision instrument of war, sent to deal with the problem.
And MacNiven doesn't hold back on showcasing what those guys can do. The way he describes their drop pods slamming into the heart of the orc lines.
Poetry. Pure, brutal poetry. And the way he captures the efficiency of the Astartes, even amidst the chaos of that battlefield.
We're talking bolters blazing, chainswords roaring the works. It's one of those moments where you just can't help but cheer, even though you know it's about to get really messy. But before we get to the carnage, I have to ask, what did you think of the Fulminata's roster? We've got intercessors holding the line, aggressors unleashing hell, hellblasters providing some serious firepower.
It's a well-rounded force, ready for anything. Don't forget the Reavers, those silent predators, and even a dedicated apothecary. And speaking of which, the relationship between Chaplain Kastor and Apothecary Polixis, those blood brothers, is fascinating.
Right. You've got these two brothers, warriors born and bred, but embodying such different aspects of what it means to be an Ultramarine. On the one hand, you've got Kastor, the spiritual heart of the company, wielding his faith as a weapon.
He's more than just a warrior priest. He carries the Crozius Arcanum, basically a power mace that could crack a tank. And let's not forget the litanies, those prayers that boost the morale of his brothers and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies.
Yeah, facing down a horde of orcs with nothing but faith and a giant glowing mace that takes some serious guts. And then there's Polixis, the apothecary. Talk about a critical role.
Yeah.
He's not just a warrior medic. He's responsible for retrieving the gene seed of fallen comrades, preserving their essence for the chapter.
It's a sacred duty and a heavy burden. Imagine the weight on his shoulders, knowing that every fallen brother represents a potential loss for the future of the chapter.
It's a side of the Astartes we don't often see explored in such detail.
Absolutely. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to their characters and the sacrifices they make.
So we've got this incredible stage set, a microcosm of the Ultramarines, thrown into a desperate fight for survival. Where does the real action kick off in Blood of Iax?
The industrial city of Shabbat Alpha. Think towering refineries, sprawling factories, and orcs dug in everywhere, turning the place into a fortress. Control of Shabbat Alpha means control of vital resources, and neither side is willing to back down.
Shabbat Alpha. I can already picture it. Grimy, industrial, crawling with orcs. Sounds like the perfect setting for some classic 40K carnage.
And you wouldn't be wrong. MacNiven really ramps up the action in this part of the book. It's a brutal, desperate fight for every inch of the city.
You've got the Ultramarines, those masters of urban warfare, but they're fighting alongside the Imperial Guard, right?
Yeah, it's a true coalition of forces, all trying to hold back the Green Tide. You've got regiments from Cadia, Talon Desert Raiders, even a contingent of Mordian Iron Guard.
So a real mix of fighting styles and tactics. Must have made for some interesting dynamics on the battlefield.
Absolutely, and MacNiven doesn't shy away from those details. You can almost hear the roar of the Leman Russ tanks as they trade fire with orc battle wagons.
But we can't forget about the orc warlord, Urgork. This is the guy with the seizures, right? That can't be good for battlefield command.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But here's where it gets weird. Urgork's seizures. They're not exactly a weakness.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How do seizures turn into an advantage, especially in the middle of a YGH?
It's all thanks to his weird boy, a particularly powerful orc psyker. He's somehow figured out a way to, well, manipulate those seizures.
Manipulate, you mean like predict them? Use them to scare the other orcs into fighting harder?
Not quite. It's more like he's channeling something through those seizures. There are these moments where Urgork's eyes go blank, he starts convulsing, and the weird boy's right there, chanting, whispering in his ear. And when Urgork comes out of it, he's got these flashes of tactical brilliance.
So he's like a conduit for some kind of WGH psychic energy or something. That's both fascinating and terrifying.
That's a pretty good way to put it. Urgork becomes a weapon, a conduit for the WGH chaotic energy, and the Imperium has no idea how to counter it.
So how do the Ultramarines even begin to counter a warlord who's basically tapping into the psychic energy of an entire WH? That just sounds unfair.
For a while, they actually managed to hold their own. The Ultramarines, they're adaptable, they're masters of strategy, even against an unpredictable foe like Urgork. But then, things take a turn for the worse. Remember how I mentioned those flashes of tactical brilliance?
Yeah, the ones channeled through his seizures.
Well, one of those flashes leads to a devastating attack, a surprise aerial bombardment, right into the heart of the Imperial lines.
And we're not just talking about a few unlucky storm boys here, right?
We're talking squadrons of fighter-bombers screaming out of the sky, dropping bombs on anything with an Imperial Aquila.
Oh, that's brutal. Even for the Orks, that seems excessive.
War is never pretty, especially in the 41st millennium. And for the Orks, well, excessive is kind of their thing, but yeah, the bombardment catches the Imperium completely off guard.
So what happens to our boys in blue amidst all this chaos? Surely the Ultramarines had some kind of plan to deal with this.
The Fulminata, they do what they do best. They hold the line. They become a shield, buying precious time for the surviving Imperial forces to pull back.
But at a cost, I'm guessing.
A heavy one. The Fulminata, they lose their captain, their ancient, many of their battle brothers. Even their precious repulsor tank gets captured.
And Polixis. We can't forget about him.
He's devastated. Every fallen brother, it weighs on him. He knows his duty is to retrieve their gene seed, but with the Orks overrunning their position, he's forced to make a choice retreat or be overrun himself.
And Kastor. His brother is out there, captured by the Orks. He must be going through it.
It's more than that. The Basilica, that ancient shrine, it's fallen to the Orks too. He feels the weight of every loss, the defeneration of that sacred ground.
Duty versus family. It's a dilemma as old as time.
And Kastor has to find a way to balance both. He can't abandon his duty, but he also can't stand by and let his brother suffer.
So let me get this straight. We've got Polixis, an apothecary who's sworn to recover the gene seed of his fallen brothers, stuck in the hands of Orks who are obsessed with the Astartes. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for something far, far worse. Remember how we were talking about Urgork's seizures, how they seem to give him these flashes of tactical brilliance? Well, it turns out those seizures are just the tip of the iceberg.
You're going to have to elaborate on that one.
Urgork doesn't just want to defeat the Ultramarines, he wants to understand them. He wants to unlock the secrets of their strength, their discipline, their sheer willpower, and he thinks the way to do that is to crack open an Astartes' mind. Literally.
You're kidding me. They're not actually going to. They wouldn't.
Oh, they go there. MacNiven doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of the 41st millennium. He has Urgork use his weird boy to essentially perform a psychic vivisection on Polixis.
That's just barbaric. Even for Orks, that seems beyond the pale.
The Orks, they don't care about the sanctity of the mind, the soul. They're driven by a primal need to understand, to conquer.
So what happens? Does Polixis break? Can even an Astartes withstand that kind of psychic assault?
It's the ultimate test of faith, of willpower, of everything the Astartes represent. Polixis endures unimaginable torment as the weird boy digs through his memories, his training, his very essence, and through it all, he clings to his oaths to the Emperor. It's a testament to the sheer mental fortitude of the Astartes.
Meanwhile, back in the city, you've got Kastor leading the Reavers on this desperate rescue mission. I have to give MacNiven credit. He knows how to build suspense.
It's a race against time. The Reavers, they're like phantoms moving through the shadows, picking off Orks with cold efficiency.
And I love how MacNiven weaves in those little details, the way they use their grappling hooks to scale buildings, the hiss of their camo cloaks as they disappear into the darkness. It's those little touches that really bring the action to life.
He really captures the essence of the Reavers, those silent predators, always lurking just beyond the enemy's sight.
So how do the two storylines converge? We've got Polixis enduring a psychic interrogation, the Reavers closing in on Urgork's location.
It's a symphony of chaos and precision. The Reavers, they link up with a Colonel Davik from the Imperial Guard.
Tough as nails, those Mordians.
You said it. And they use Davik's men as a distraction, drawing the Orks' attention away from the basilica.
Talk about a diversion. I bet those Orks didn't know what hit them.
It's the perfect opportunity. While the Orks are busy dealing with the Mordians, the Reavers slip into the basilica.
From Kastor, I'm guessing he's leading the charge.
He's ready to unleash righteous fury on anything with more than 2 teeth. But Severus, the Reaver sergeant, convinces him to wait.
Smart move. Those Reavers, they're all about patience, picking their targets carefully.
They wait for the perfect moment, and when they strike, it's like watching a whirlwind of precision and brutality.
And Polixis, what's he doing during all of this?
Remember that psychic assault I was talking about? The one that was ripping him apart from the inside out? Well, he channels that pain, that rage, into a weapon.
He breaks free.
He breaks free, grabs a fallen comrade's power sword, and charges into the fray.
So it's brother against brother, Space Marine against Orc Warlord. Who comes out on top?
It's a scene right out of an epic saga. Kastor, wielding his faith and his Crozius Arcanum, carves a path through the Orks. Polixis, fueled by righteous fury, cuts down anything that stands in his way.
The power of family, eh?
Don't forget duty, don't forget honor.
But this is Warhammer 40K. Can't be that easy, can it?
You're right. Just when it seems like the tide has turned, Urgork rises again. He's been beaten, battered, but that weird boy, he's still got some tricks up his sleeve.
He's like a green skin Rasputin, keeping Urgork alive through sheer force of will. So how do they finally end it? What could possibly stop an Orc warlord who's basically powered by a psychic battery pack?
It's not Kastor with his faith or Polixis with his fury. It's Severus, the Reaver sergeant.
Severus, really. Quiet, efficient, always in the shadows, Severus.
While everyone else is focused on Urgork, Severus sees an opening. One precise shot, one kill.
Classic Reaver tactics. Maximum damage, minimal fuss.
It's a reminder that even in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, even amidst the chaos and carnage, there's a certain beauty and efficiency.
So the dust settles, the Orcs are routed, and the Fulminata stand triumphant. But as we all know, victory in the 41st millennium is a fleeting thing. What lasting impact does this battle have on our heroes?
They may have won the day, but the Fulminata are forever changed. They've lost good men, brothers in arms. Kastor and Polixis, they may be reunited, but they carry the scars of their ordeal, the weight of their sacrifices.
It's a sobering reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And sometimes even victory comes at a terrible price. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Blood of Iax. We'll see you next time when we'll be exploring the dark underbelly of Necromunda.